This camera's shutter speeds are controlled by the Earth's gravity. It's called the Purma Special. But before I show you this dark magic, it's worth knowing a little bit about where this thing came from. In 1935, Tom Purvis and Alfred Mayo made the big brain move to start selling cameras using a new focal plane shutter that Mayo had invented. Cameras of the time, such as Leicas and Contax, used fancy pants cloth shutters and complicated spring tension curtains, which were expensive to produce and expensive to sell. Our boys Tomo and Al saw this and were like, "F that. Our new shutter is simpler, thus cheaper to produce." By 1939, the Special was being sold for $14, which is about $275 in today's money. To put this shutter into layman's terms, there's a weight in here which, depending on its orientation, determines the shutter opening as well as the shutter speeds. If you put this winder down, then the weight's got to work against gravity, giving you the slow speed of 1/25 of a second. Bust a 180, and then the weight works with gravity, giving you the fast speed of 1/450th of a second. Then if you hold it on its side, the weight's sort of just chilling and it gives you the speed of 1/150th of a second. And you don't have to worry about framing portrait or landscape, because this camera produces an absolute chode of a square negative at 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch. Now I hear what you're saying. "Jack, you greasy idiot, you expect me to believe I can get a good image out of this antique piece of crap?" Well, there's only one way we're going to get to the bottom of that, and that's if we take this thing for a spin and fire off a couple of rolls. And speaking of rolls, it's time to address the huge film-shaped elephant in the room. This old girl takes 127 film. If you don't know what 127 is, it's a roll film that Kodak discontinued back in '95 in favour of more popular formats. But hey, don't let that put you off, you can still buy this shit fresh. Granted, you haven't got a lot of options though. Out of the limited stocks out there, I opted for a rarer pan black and white and a colour stock labelled as Rolly Crossbird Creative. I got these two rolls off of eBay for pretty much the same price that you'd pay for 120 film. But if buying 127 doesn't tickle your pickle, you could always make your own. There's a company called Camerhack which make this film cutter, which I can only assume is pronounced fuck 127. Pretty apt if you ask me, but that means you can cut down 120 rolls and use them. The beauty of doing that as well is if you're a glutton for punishment and own a miniature camera like a Minolta 16, you can use the excess to load that fiddly piece of micro bullshit. So what's this thing actually like to shoot with? Well, if you like large, bright viewfinders, then I'm afraid you're shit out of luck. Looking through this thing, I imagine, is only slightly better than being completely blind. Rumour has it, though, that the Purma Special was the first camera to use a plastic viewfinder, and you're not going to get it right first time, are you? So, you know, we'll let them off. So here's the first shot, and I'm just going to say it. I don't like this film. Word on the street is that this film's a lying bastard. It's actually an E6 film stock that's meant to be developed in C41 to give it that creative look. Personally, I'm not a fan, but you might be, if you like your photos to look as if they were shot through a piss-soaked bucket of sand. Granted, these photos probably weren't going to be groundbreaking anyway, but I took this film to my local lab technician to get his opinion. And I quote, "Trouble is, we don't really know what this film stock is. Is it new? Is it old? I don't know. Do you know? Does anyone know? I mean, look at it next to Kodak colour film. It doesn't even look like it's got any colour in it. But ultimately, I don't care. How did you get in my house?" Nah, I'm joking. These pages are blank. Anyway, I digress. Let's get back to more bad photos. Next up was this rarer pan. Now, if you've loaded 120 film before, then this thing won't feel alien to you. Swap over the old take-up spool, slot in the new film, feed it over, get sweaty hands, become uncontrollably shaky, fuck up, start again. All the standard stuff, really. I also just want to make it clear that I don't make a habit of shooting film in graveyards like some sort of hip vampire. But after the disappointing results on the first roll, I really didn't fancy going on a big photo mission, so I just shot stuff that was pretty local to me. Lefties can get excited though, as that's where the shutter button's located. I will admit this took me a little bit of getting used to. Also, the travel on said shutter button is longer than your list of broken dreams. But this is all made up for by the way that you cock the shutter and advance the film. There's this super ergonomical pear-shaped nugget on the front of the camera that you use to cock the shutter. You just gotta be careful that when you actually take the photo, your butterfingers don't get in the way, because that's gonna stop it and then ruin your exposure. And the film winder, oh sweet lord, heaven above. The satisfaction that you get from winding the film on is top drawer. I mean, it's only a simple little knob, but there is something so wonderful about the feel and the noise of it. And like lots of old film cameras, which are completely unnecessary to use today, we've got a film window on the back. But this time, to mix it up, we got 2 of them. The idea is at first you line up to the one on the left, and when you take your exposure, you line the same number to the one on the right. Also, focusing with this camera is dead easy because you don't have to do shit. In theory, it's focused from 10 foot to infinity, so everything from the front of your mama to the back of your mama should be in focus. I don't know how true this is though, mine seems to just make up its own mind. In a lot of these shots as well, my copy seems to produce this strange sort of tilt-shift focus effect. Some bits are in focus, some are out of focus, but hey, you know, I kind of like it. It kind of really reinforced that I'm shooting an old piece of shit look. But maybe it's something to do with the fact that the lens isn't fixed at the front, and when it pops out, maybe sometimes it doesn't seat properly. I don't know. The 6.3 fixed aperture lens sits inside the body when the cap is on, and when the lens is in this position, it also locks the shutter, which I have mixed feelings about. A couple of times I'd go to take a picture and it would stop me and show me what a dum-dum I've been and left the cap on. I understand that it's doing me a favour and not letting me ruin an exposure, but I also feel like it's kind of mugging me off. Like, you're not better than me, Purma Special. Let me make a mistake. So this camera's made of Bakelite. If you're unaware of what Bakelite is, it's a really early plastic invented at the start of the 20th century, and it was made by a chemist called Leo Baekeland. Crazy fact about Leo, he also invented the first commercially successful photographic paper and then sold it to Eastman Kodak in 1899 for like $750,000. In 1899, $750. Dude was making bank. I don't even want to work out what that is today. So big round of applause for Leo for his contribution to the film photography community, although he did also invent plastic, which is going to be filling landfill and our oceans for the next 400 years. So, you know, bro was a double-edged sword. Because this is made of a synthetic plastic, it is super light. You could have it in your pocket, probably forget about it. But although Bakelite's supposed to be resilient, I do feel like if I dropped this thing, it's going to shatter into 1,000 pieces. I actually quite like the composition in this photo, even though it is softer than a delicious baked camembert. I like the way that the road sort of leads the viewer's eyes to the lone house in the background, and the decision to block the pylon with the tree makes it look like the power lines are coming out of the tree. It's sort of like a criticism of how technology is really detracting from the true beauty of nature. I don't know, some fucking bullshit like that, you tell me. As you can see, there's very little else going on with this camera. Absolutely nothing on the bottom, not even a tripod mount, which is understandable considering that you're flipping this thing all over the place, changing the shutter speeds. Instead, this is where I like to keep the tape to secure the film door, which is just kept in with these 2 tiny little clips. I really get the feeling that this thing can't wait to pop off and waste the 14 quid I just put in it, which, to be honest, might not be a bad thing. One nice little touch is that you don't need to worry about forgetting which way up does what shutter speeds, because on either side of the viewfinder there's little reminders written down. On one side it says how quickly you need to subscribe to this channel, and on the other side it has what people call me behind my back. This photo is a great representation of the complete lie that the viewfinder's telling you. I did have this phone box centered up, but I should have known better really. And of course, what you're seeing through the viewfinder isn't going to be a true representation of what the lens sees. My dumbass was just wishful thinking. I also had no intention of shooting quite so many pillboxes with this camera. If you don't know what a pillbox is, the government built them in World War II in case things got hairy over here. Most of them are bricked up now, filled with empty beer cans and the occasional used Johnny. But this one set into the woodland was still pretty accessible, if you completely ignore the signs that certain death awaits you inside. I actually had real trouble shooting this one. I'm trying to make more of a point of looking for contrast when I'm shooting black and white. And with all the trees and everything, I was in danger of producing an image that is just a mash of undefined shapes filling the frame. It's It's not often that you get directly under power lines like this, and I'm a bit of a sucker for symmetrical composition. I was going to have the power lines coming overhead then just like sort of disappearing off into the distance. It was going to be great. Or how about no idea what happened here. I'm way off. Way too much to be a fault of the viewfinder. Thankfully though, I did capture this on my latest daily carry camera that I had hidden in my pocket. 10 points to Hufflepuff if you can guess what this was shot on. So my thoughts on using this as a tool for producing images. I mean, yeah, the gravity operated shutter's pretty cool for about 5 minutes, but when you get over it, the excitement sort of just fades away. Also, I didn't really find myself changing up the shutter speeds as much as I would be. Because you don't have any aperture control, unless you're going in and out of varying lighting situations, you're pretty much just going to be holding it the same way up most of the time. I also feel like the slow speed is just a little bit too slow. You need zen-like calmness to be able to handhold it at that speed. I do anyway, like anything under 150 if I'm else it's going to be blurry, unless you're into that sort of thing, in which case, you know, you do you. For all intents and purposes, I'd just treat this thing like a disposable with 2 extra shutter speeds if you really need them. I mean, I can appreciate it for its engineering and design. The sort of Art Deco look is just, it's really spot on. It's like a camera they'd shoot in Bioshock down in Rapture or something. And I'm sure it was a pretty amazing option to have back in the day for the money. But today, it just feels like an antique. And I don't mind shooting antiques most of the time. If it was 35mm, I'd probably be more inclined to use it. But the fact that it's 127 sort of relegates this as being a shelf piece. By all means though, get one as a collector's item. Who doesn't want a gravity operated camera to whip out when your film shooting dinner guests come round? And if you're really desperate for that vintage look in your photos, then I don't think this is a bad option. And when the focus works, this thing can knock out a sharp image. I mean, not brilliant, but it's better than a kick in the shins. Vignetting seems a little bit heavy, but really, look, none of this really matters. If you're picking up a 90-year-old plastic camera to do serious work, then you've got bigger issues, bud, than the quality of this lens. But as a quirky collector's item, something truly unique, something that we don't see every day, it's definitely worth picking one up.